Now, in a bid to reduce importation of fuel, addressing fuel price hike and give more money to the economy, the federal government has approved the sum of $1.5 billion for the rehabilitation of the country's largest refining company, the PortHarcourt Refinery. The PortHarcourt Refinery, which remains the largest refining company in Nigeria until the time the Dangote Refinery in Lagos will be activated, has a capacity to process 210,000 barrels per day. The refinery, which has been repaired innumerable times under various turnaround maintenance contracts that had gulped huge amounts of money, has refined no crude for the country. According to the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Mr. Timipre Silva, the rehabilitation, which will be done in 3 phases of 18, 24, and 44 months, will address the problems of refinery maintenance, which has dogged the nation's 4 refineries over the years. It would be recalled that Nigeria has spent about $25 billion in turnaround maintenance of refineries in the past 25 years. The prevailing development is coming after promises by the administration that the government will no longer spend on the facility. Previous rehabilitations notwithstanding, according to the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation audit report, had last year revealed that 3 of the nation's 4 refineries recorded 1.64 trillion naira cumulative losses in their 2014 to 2018 details. At the time, the nation's economy is in despair and burdened with huge borrowing. The big question begging for answer is, what will be the impact of this development on the petroleum industry and, of course, the economy at large at this time where we grapple with high inflation figures and, of course, high figures on the unemployment side. Well, joining me live via Skype to discuss all of this and many others is a partner tax and regulatory services at Deloitte, Nigeria, Mr. Taiwo Okwade. Thank you very much, Mr. Okwade, for your time. I appreciate this.
Thank you very much.
Yes, if you can hear me clearly, first let's start with the 1.5 billion US dollars earmarked we used to rehabilitate the PortHarcourt Refinery. At this same time, where the NBS just came out with 13.33% as our inflation figures and above 30% for unemployment rate. Now, how does this come to you? Some say it looks like a misplaced priority. Tell us what you make of all of this. Mr. Okwade, can you hear me?
It depends on how you are looking at it. So if I can hear you.
Go ahead.
Hello, I can hear you.
Go ahead, please. Make your point.
So it depends on how you are looking at this. It depends on which. Okay. So the rehabilitation of the PortHarcourt Refinery is going to contribute to the economic development of the country, on the foreign exchange reserves of the country. And if the government set out the end result as a result of the investment into the rehabilitation of the refinery, I don't see any reason why this cannot be done. The benefits that the country is going to derive from this investment may not be something that will be felt in the short term. It could be a long-term benefit, which will impact on the rate of unemployment that we have in the country. It will also impact significantly on the inflation rate that we have at the moment. Now, if the refinery is rehabilitated and it becomes operational, if the government can get it to at least 90% capacity as promised, then there will be higher employment because the refinery will start producing and the refinery will have to employ more people to contribute into the production of crude oil. So if the government is able to achieve that, then I think there is a benefit in sight for the economy. As you are aware, the rate of unemployment at the moment is about 33.3%. Now, there are so many people that are in the unemployed category in the country. Now, if the government does not do something drastic or something drastic, it will not be able to see the trend of unemployment and the mystery index of the country. So I think the investment into the PortHarcourt Refinery is one way to go. It's a good development if the government is sincere about the end result and the government is going to be serious about the maintenance of the refinery going forward.
Let me follow up with that, but don't forget that this is a time where we've been talking about subsidy or no subsidy, deregulation or no deregulation. And now we are coming again to invest this kind of funds into refining. What do you also think along that line? Mr. Okwade, did you get my question?
Okay. I think that's a very good point. It's a valid. I got the point. It's a valid point, and the regulation is something that a lot of countries are considering at the moment. I know the government said something about regulating the refinery by transferring it to the private sector, but if the government is looking at the disadvantages of transferring the refinery to the private sector and looking at the lack of funds in the private sector to continue to sustain and maintain the refinery. It'd be a good idea for the government to maintain that refinery. The regulation is the way a lot of countries are going. So it would be a good idea for the government to also tread that path. I know the government has been, looking at the opportunity of adopting the BOT model, which is build, operate, and trust. So, if the government is able to at least get the private sector to participate into the building, the operating, and the transfer of the refineries going forward, then the idea of deregulating the oil sector and the refinery will be so immense and it will bring a lot of benefit to the economy. So deregulation is the way to go, but pending when that can be achieved by the government, I think maintaining the refinery and at least bringing it to 90% capacity as promised by the government will help significantly in turning the economy around.
See that optimism there. Now, let's now move to efforts being made by government. We've seen deliberate efforts aimed at improving agriculture, improving also the ICT space, trying to create jobs. But with these figures that we got from the NBS, it's casting a shadow on all of these efforts. What do you make of this?
I agree. The effort that government has been putting into agriculture and the information sector has not really been, you have not really seen any traction. It hasn't really gained any traction, especially when you look at the agricultural sector. If you look at the inflation, especially food inflation increased from 20% month on month to about 21, from 20%, 20.5% to about 21.79%, which is an indication that the prices of food items continue to increase, even with all the effort of the government. So it means the government is not doing enough. Even if there are efforts that are being shown, we don't just effort. We want to see results. So, so government will still need to do a lot of things to help in, especially when it comes to the value chain of the food sector. If you don't take care of the value chain, if people produce and get out the food or the agricultural items from the locations where those products are going to be sold at a very cheap rate, the prices will continue to increase, especially the prices of food items. And I also agree that government will also need to focus, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic from last year. A lot of organizations had to shift attention to information technology sector because that was the sector contributed a lot in helping people to. So it is a lot of work for the government, but I see a lot of positives. The rate of inflation, even though it's increasing in the food on food items, I see a reduction in core inflation, which means that other parts of other items that are being exchanged in the economy, there has been a reduction in inflation.
Let's see if we
so
can
if government can work significantly on the agricultural sector, it will help in reducing the rate of inflation, because at the rate at which we are going, the mystery index is increasing on a daily basis. At the rate at which we are going, God forbid, we don't want to be on the same level with countries that are having very high mystery index like South Africa, Venezuela. So it's still a lot of work left for the government to do to turn this inflation, the continuous increase in inflation rate around.
Okay, almost finally, recovery from effects of COVID-19 and all of the challenges we face as a country is something that is key. And considering our population growth and our GDP growth, which is very worrisome, everybody talks about that. What kind of recovery do you see for Nigeria as we move on, getting out post-COVID-19 and moving forward? What kind of business environment do you see in Nigeria?
Okay, fortunately, the country came out of recession towards the end of last year. So the quarter 3 of last year, we came out of recession. Hopefully, by the time the number for quarter 4, the last quarter of 2020 is released, maybe we'll continue to at least show an increase in economic growth. So what I think government we need to do now to at least make sure that the economy, is sustained, or the economy continue to, improve, is to look at several sectors of the economy that are impacted significantly by this COVID-19. For instance, government needs to pay more attention to the hospitality sector. If you notice, all around the country, you see a lot of organizations, a lot of event centers, hotels that have been hindered or that have been affected by the impact of COVID-19. A lot of hotels are not being utilized to their full capacity. Event centers are closed. So what government will need to do for it to be able to at least jumpstart the economy is to make sure that policies, measures are developed to give certain funds or give funds to those sectors that are significantly impacted, so that when those sectors at least are compensated in form of maybe a reduction in that are giving to those sectors, you will see increase reduction in unemployment in those sectors. You will see reduction in inflation rate within the country. You will see those sectors trying to invest in certain things that will help them to change their business model, so that they will still continue to do they will still continue to engage in their productive activity without necessarily having to disengage any of their employees. So this is what I think the government needs to do. Government needs to focus on the hospitality and the entertainment industry. Entertainment is also very important because people pay a lot of money to be entertained. If government invest a lot in entertainment, it will be that have been felt in other sectors of the economy that are significantly impacted by COVID-19 pandemic.
Well said. Almost finally, I love those sectors identified, because at least those are sectors that government can focus on, explore to create more jobs at this time. But as we wrap up, what about the subnational level? I think states also have a role to play in all of this, because when you also look at these MBS figures, you see states a huge debt, and their states still lack jobs and not creating an enabling environment for their people to thrive. Now, it's a two-in-one question. What do you make of the debt level, both federal and subnational? And how do you see the states getting out of this, even the federal government wading through all of this with the challenges that we have as we move on?
I understand where, that's a valid question. And I understand where people are coming from, where they say that they have concern around the debt level at subnational level and at the federal level at the moment. But one thing I believe that people should be focusing on is how to jumpstart the economy. At this point, the amount of debt that is incurred by the country or by the state should not be an indication of what we want to be in the next, possibly maybe the next 2, 3, or 4 years. What we need to be looking at is how to make sure that the economy is turned around. Whatever we need to do to trigger that is what we should be focusing on. If the government will need to obtain more debt for it to be able to jumpstart those critical sectors those essential sectors of the economy, the government needs to do that. It's one aspect that I also agree with people when it comes to government using debt to finance or to triggering or jumpstarting the economy is whether the debt that is being incurred is being used the right way. So what we need to focus on is how the government is utilizing the debt, rather than the debt that is being incurred by the government. So it's a big conversation. If you look at some of the developed countries, the UK, the US, they are incurring significant debt just to jumpstart their economy. I think we should also be looking at doing something similar to that. This is not the time to start looking at the volume of debt or the amount of debt that is being incurred at the state level, as long as the state and the federal government are using the debt incurred to turn the economy around, to invest in infrastructure, and to invest in the critical sectors of the economy. That would be a good thing, which the country is going to benefit, or the economy is going to benefit from in the next 2 or 3 years down the line.
Let's wrap up on this note. A community or a country that is not productive cannot even pay taxes. Now, taxation is key at this time when government is trying to shore up revenue. When we have figures like this, what do you make of tax income coming into government? What are you expecting?
Yes, I agree with you. This is a challenging time for the country for tax collection. Even if you look at all the indices, you look at the unemployment rate, you look at the inflation rate, even if government continue to sustain the tax collection from last year, it is still not doing enough. But like I mentioned before, government should not be focusing too much on what is able to get from the economy if you are not doing things that will help in turning the economy around. You can't say productive activity is reducing if you are not looking at the sectors or industries that are being affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So you need to be able to help in jumpstarting the critical sectors of the economy. First of all, if you are able to jumpstart the critical sector of the economy, there is a tendency that productive activity will increase. And if that happens, there is a possibility that the amount of taxes that will be collected by government will also increase. But you also need to look at the issue of inflation. Even if government is so deliberate in the way it's turning the critical sectors of the economy around, the amount of inflation now will have significant impact on the collection of the government. You can't look at the FRS that plans to collect about 5 trillion naira in a year last year, and think that FRS collecting 5 trillion naira this year will make the same impact. No, inflation rate has increased, so which means that if you collect the same 5 trillion naira this year, there has been a reduction in the amount of tax collection rather than a sustenance of the tax collection. So what government will need to do is to continue to focus on the critical sectors of the economy, the sectors of the economy that are significantly impacted by COVID-19, turn those sectors around and make sure that rate of unemployment reduces significantly. If that happens and you're able to increase the productive activity in the country, there is a possibility that the revenue of companies will increase, and you also be able to generate more tax.
All right, partner tax and regulatory services at Deloitte Nigeria, Mr. Taiwo Kwade. It's really nice to have you join us on the show for the first time. We appreciate this, and we'll call on you again. We hope you'll be there for us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate